Isla's heart raced as the flight attendant loomed over her, arms crossed, voice thick with irritation. "You need to move now." Confusion washed over her in an instant. Her seat was paid for, first class, assigned specifically to her. Yet the woman in uniform didn't even glance at her ticket before making the demand. Around her, passengers avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice. No one spoke up. No one questioned why she, and only she, was being singled out. Swallowing her pride, Isla gripped the strap of her bag. She could argue. She could insist on her right to the seat. But would anyone listen? The walk to the economy section felt unbearably long. Shame burned deep in her chest. She had done nothing wrong, yet she was being treated as if she were an imposter, trespassing where she didn't belong. What the flight attendant didn't know was that Isla's father owned the airline. Injustice? Well, that was about to take flight at 35,000 feet. This is T.O. Stories, where the unexpected unfolds and karma always catches up. Stay tuned, because this flight is about to take a turn no one saw coming. Isla sat stiffly in the cramped economy seat, her phone trembling in her hands. Her first-class seat had been a gift from her father, a celebration of her first solo flight. And now she sat here, demoted without explanation. A text pinged on her screen. "Dad, everything okay? Boarded yet?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should she tell him? Could he even help? Now that the plane was already in the air? "Isla, they made me move. Said I couldn't sit in first class." The reply came almost instantly. "Dad, who made you move?" Her heart pounded. She hesitated, then typed. "Isla, the flight attendant." A long pause. "Dad, what's the flight number?" Back at the front of the plane, Linda, the flight attendant who had moved Isla, stirred her coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing. To her, it had been a simple seating adjustment. She had seen people sneak into first class before and assumed this was the same. But her colleague Emily hadn't missed the stiff posture, the trembling hands, the unmistakable humiliation Isla had tried to hide. "Did you check the manifest?" Emily asked quietly. Linda barely looked up. "Didn't need to." Emily frowned. "I think she had a first-class ticket." Linda shrugged. "Probably a mistake. These things happen." Before Emily could push further, the intercom crackled. "Miss Thompson, report to the cockpit immediately." Linda stiffened. The captain rarely called unless something serious was up. Setting down her coffee, she smoothed her uniform and made her way to the front, her heels clicking against the cabin floor. Inside the cockpit, Captain James Reynolds sat rigid in his seat. But Linda's attention was instantly drawn to the screen in front of him. A man's face stared back, sharp features, his expression calm, but lined with barely restrained fury. "Miss Thompson." The voice was low, but carried undeniable authority. "You removed my daughter from her assigned seat." Linda's throat went dry. "Daniel Carter, the airline's owner. You told her she didn't belong," he continued, voice steady, controlled, but cutting deep. I didn't realize," Linda stammered. Daniel didn't let her finish. "Did you ask anyone else in first class to prove they belonged?" Linda's mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't. "You assumed," Daniel said coldly. The weight of her mistake hit her like a blow. Not a simple error, a choice, a bias. And now, she would face the consequences. Back in economy, Isla sat unaware of the storm brewing at the front of the plane. Another text pinged on her phone. "Dad, stay in your seat. I'm handling this." Moments later, the intercom crackled again. "Miss Carter, please return to your original seat in first class." Isla's head snapped up. Linda now stood awkwardly in the aisle, her voice quieter. "There was a mistake. You may return to your assigned seat." For a moment, Isla didn't move. She studied Linda, the forced calm, the way her hands fidgeted at her sides. "A mistake?" she asked, her voice calm but steady. Linda swallowed hard. "Yes." Without another word, Isla stood, adjusting her bag. The walk back to first class wasn't triumphant. She wasn't smug, but the shift in the air was unmistakable. Passengers who had watched her walk out earlier now avoided her gaze, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. She sat down, opened the in-flight magazine, and flipped through it, though she wasn't reading. She was waiting. Linda hovered nearby. "Can I get you anything?" "You didn't ask me that before," Isla replied simply. Linda stiffened. "Excuse me? When I first sat here," Isla said, "you didn't greet me. You didn't offer me a drink. You didn't treat me like everyone else." Silence stretched between them. Linda's face flushed. "I apologize." Isla considered for a beat. "I'll take sparkling water." Linda hurried off, returning quickly with a drink, her politeness forced. As she turned to leave, Isla's voice stopped her. "I texted my dad about you." Linda froze. "He wasn't happy," Isla added, taking a slow sip. Linda forced a thin smile. "I see. You'll probably find out more when we land." At the front of the plane, the in-flight phone rang again. Linda picked it up, her hands clammy against the receiver. "This is Miss Thompson." Daniel Carter's voice was calm, but final. "You will personally file a report on this incident when the flight lands. And you will make sure my daughter receives the same treatment as every other first-class passenger for the remainder of this flight." "Yes, sir." The call ended with a soft click. When the plane finally touched down, the usual rustle of passengers unbuckling seatbelts filled the cabin. But for Linda, each click echoed like a countdown. As she prepared to leave, a uniformed security officer boarded the plane, moving past the disembarking passengers until he stopped in front of her. "Miss Thompson," he said calmly, "you'll need to come with us." A gasp rippled through the cabin. Linda swallowed hard. "Is this necessary?" "Mr. Carter has requested a formal review of the incident." Passengers watched as she was escorted off the plane. Isla remained in her seat, her expression unreadable. Weeks later, Linda sat in the waiting room of Carter Aviation's headquarters, a manila folder clutched in her hands. 3 months of training, uncomfortable conversations, and self-reflection had brought her here. Across the table, Daniel Carter flipped through her file, his face impassive. Isla sat beside him, arms crossed. "You finished the training," Daniel finally said. "What did you learn?" Linda hesitated. She could quote policies or recite rules, but that wasn't the point. "I learned that I didn't really see people," she admitted. "I thought I was just enforcing rules, but I was deciding who belonged, without even realizing it." Isla studied her. "So, if I walked onto your flight tomorrow?" "I'd welcome you," Linda answered firmly. "No questions. Because you belong." Isla nodded. Daniel closed the file. "You're reinstated, on probation." Linda exhaled, relief washing over her. A second chance, not just at her job, but at being better. Some lessons come easy. Others shake you to your core. But real change? It happens when you decide to be different. If this story moved you like this video, share it and help TO Stories reach 10,000 subscribers. Because stories like this, they deserve to be heard.